It was 2005 when a horrible story broke in Brazil regarding the theft from the central bank in Fortaleza. Authorities were shocked when they reached the scene that infamous morning of August 8. This was no ordinary bank. The best security team guarded the nation's underground vaults, having used state-of-the-art technology to create an impregnable fortress. There are thermal sensors and surveillance cameras and everything else. Strong defenses had never failed before, but the night before, phantom robbers had broken in the indestructible vault, making it an empty case. A high-security bank gets robbed, and no alarm was raised. The robbers, with almost $40 million in their pockets, had fled through the darkness of the night unnoticed. It all began right from the start. It was Monday, and the weekend holiday had just ended. The bankers got back to work as usual, returned to the building, and went downstairs where they had stacked all the money. An unexpected gaping hole in the earth caught them off guard and appeared to lead to a subterranean passageway. What was strange was the extremely narrow width of the hole. The cops were also aware that breaking into it was an impossibility. How much money was stolen was the first question the cops inquired. The bankers claimed ignorance over the precise amount, but claimed it was more than $100 million. It turned out to be 164 million reals, or about 80 million USD after careful calculations. It was a very substantial sum. The authorities, seated close to the opening, appeared perplexed and bewildered. When they were stuck, one of the slim ones proposed they go through the hole. Another officer cautioned him that it could be risky. Maybe the bandits dropped some explosives inside. On the other hand, they might be armed and still present. Eneas Sobrera, the courageous cop, was adamant on going down into the crevasse. Crawling inside the tube, Ineos climbed into the hole. Wooden boards supported the tunnel, and lights, fans, and ventilation tubes were all still operational. For some reason, this led Ineos to believe that the robbers may still be waiting for him at the end of the tunnel, and that they were probably armed. He was terrified that he had taken this chance, but he crawled as carefully as he could in case the thieves had left a trap or a bomb. How careful he was. For an hour, Eneas continued to creep along the tunnel, despite its nearly 70-meter length. Due to his fear, he persisted in moving at a snail's pace. The tunnel came to an end, and at its terminus, he discovered a ladder that would take him to the summit. He ascended the staircase, armed and prepared for any eventuality. He peered out of the open manhole cover of the tunnel, sifting among the debris in search of the robbers. As though nobody were there, the house appeared deserted. His search of the dusty attic revealed unsettling hints as Sobrera emerged from the dim corridor. Every surface was covered in a fine white powder that looked like fingerprints that had been scrubbed off. The room was littered with sacks and broken tools all over the place. There was a communication between this temporary shelter for the robbers and the tunnel that was lying below. Sobrera looked out of the window and saw the tall bank stood less than 70 meters away. The area could be seen from the rooftop where people were climbing. It seemed like the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle were finally being put together. The anonymous building was the home of an artificial grass company, making it the perfect facade for the covert digs of the surrounding area. Sobrera radioed back his astounding find at how much it shocked him. The news quickly spread like wildfire. In a matter of hours, camera crews, reporters, and law enforcement officers converged on the tunnel's point of origin. As the story grew, reporters from all over came to investigate. Law enforcement officials conducted a thorough search of the crime scene in what appeared to be a well-planned heist that had required a lot of resources. In order to piece together the procedures used by the perpetrators, this all-encompassing inquiry went from a residential dwelling to the basement of a bank. Notably, the incident was strikingly similar to a heist that had taken place a year earlier in São Paulo, a city known for its methodical gang activity. Since these two high-tech heists were so closely related, police began to wonder if the masterminds of the first crime might have been involved in the second. The bandits were quite crafty. They rented a house, painted it green, and pretended to be an artificial grass business. This clever disguise did two things. It kept people from seeing that sand and dirt were being taken away from the property. Indeed, they even took a chunk of the floor away to build the tunnel and somehow concealed it in what seemed to be a normal carpet which was ready to be rolled up again at any time. The tunnel itself was an astonishing 73 meters in length. As the key item was very big, it was dug out with such simple tools as a shovel and a pickaxe to reduce noise. The excavation was carried out quietly. The soil was carried away unnoticed. This was further reinforced by the laying of almost 900 wooden planks with a few steel. The use of standard tunneling tools was exposed. It included ventilation pipes, fans, and lighting, though their functioning was unique in that they had the advantage of the installation of the water pipe and the telephone line, use of which they could be in touch with those who stayed on the surface and naturally could hydrate. One of the crooks, who was later arrested, said that the operation never stopped. A 7-man team worked in shifts all the time. However, a major challenge in the operation was disposing of the dug-up soil. The quiet neighborhood raised suspicions to why daily truck visits pallets were made to haul away bags of dirt, ensuring no part of the house was left without a bag of soil before ultimately deciding on how to dispose of them in the backyard. The amount of soil upturned had increased the height of the ground by a meter. However, the leveled soil was gently re-leveled so that the yard would regain its original beauty. The robbers dug a tunnel that was almost straight, but carefully and gently swerved to avoid an underground sewer line, and there they were, in the basement of the bank. This wasn't some normal room at the bank. It had custom-built machinery in it, like an orange crane, to move the massive vaults of cash that were kept in there. The crane is a major equipment which was not supposed to be involved at all, and it was. Minutes before the job, it was moved in an apparently very harmless manner so that the CCTV cameras did not capture the egress of the basement tunnel. The position of the crane in relation to the bank, and the fact that the robbers could have gotten inside without being seen, resulted in some questions among the police, who inferred that perhaps some of the bank employees may have had something to do with the operation. Besides, the setting of the basement, grey steel columns and a gap between the wall and the money boxes, was there to promise a narrow passage at best, and made it possible for only those of a specific height to get through. So, thanks to this architectural mistake, the robbers managed to move unnoticeably to whom the cameras for monitoring in the basement were still open, but in its turn, the few available cameras were far and with blind places. Due to these blind places and the few cameras, the attackers were not captured. Bandits' further cunningness became clear from the fact that they made a special arrangement of a cart with a wooden board placed on top of it in such a way that the exit of the tunnel was not visible to the electronic surveillance cameras. They knew the security system, including the sensors, was nothing but a heat detector, which they could work around and never be detected by the ceiling location of the sensors as well as the high ceiling in the basement. The conclusion of all of these carefully planned moves happened at exactly the right time. Police believed the burglars entered the basement in the last hour of operation on a Friday night before the security sensors activated. This perfect timing, along with insider knowledge of the bank's security layout, suggested a worrying possibility of collaboration. It didn't take the robbers long on the night the crime was committed. Once inside the vault, they started putting the money into their bags. As the sun set on a Friday, they knew they could keep stealing all weekend without anyone noticing. Thieves kept sneaking the bags through the tunnel by slinging them on plastic carts and pushing them along. Each bag had 5,000 reals. Because they stole 164 million reals, it indicates that they required 330 bags to complete their theft. When law enforcement learned about the heist, they immediately launched an investigation and started the justice process. The front of the facade company, which served as a mask for the activity, was their initial point of investigation. The business was officially registered in the name of Paolo Sergio, who in his identification picture was wearing a beanie. For instance, neighbors described Paolo as gregarious and friendly, elements that could have made the very illegal activities happening right under their very noses mysterious. He said that the police went further to dig into the logistics of moving this huge loot and estimated that the stolen money weighed about 3.5 tons, which meant that a fleet of vehicles, most probably trucks, would be needed to carry out the operation. The case got some ground when detectives stumbled upon a major monetary transaction of vehicles with a nearby dealer. The buyer was none other than one Jose Charles, owner of a shipping company. While this kind of deal might be expected from someone in Charles's industry, the fact that it was paid for, in full cashed out, was particularly noteworthy for officials who then launched further investigation in their pursuits for learning more about Charles and his activities. The first thing that caught the detectives' attention in contacting the employer of Charles was the fact that he went on a so-called urgent delivery mission to São Paulo with the truck driver. The matter becomes all the more intriguing when they referred to São Paulo, since this is nothing new. A similar crime happened here about a year ago and provides evidence that the underworld of São Paulo might be linked or have its roots in the network responsible for this robbery. This link wasn't a matter of coincidence to the authorities. The details in the execution of the central bank heist and the historical precedent of a tunnel robbery in São Paulo began to connect the dots, pointing to a smart and possibly collective group of criminals. That a business owner would ride alongside a truck driver on a long trip to São Paulo, over 3,000 kilometers from the place where the crime had been committed, showed that something big was up. The case reached a turning point when the authorities located the truck that was formed to transport cars while it was on the road of almost 3,000 kilometers from São Paulo to Fortaleza. The truck was recovered in Belo Horizonte, which is between the starting point of the theft and final delivery destination. Federal agents sent in a helicopter-borne operation to seize the car. But before the agents could arrive to carry out their mission, something unexpected happened. The driver, who didn't know that he was a key man in that large crime, pulled over to the highway police station willingly. The driver was keeping to Charles's orders for immediate delivery of the vehicle vehicle but was not aware of the stuff it would carry. The driver was left puzzled by Charles as he was very insistent on accompanying the journey and had queer behaviors such as talking on payphones. The robbery of the central bank gained great fame when, through the found bundles of money in the cars that the driver was driving, came to it investigators. The driver in his turn contributed to the acceleration of the disintegration of the scheme when he decided to approach the authorities. He and Charles were both arrested and questioned, which led to the recovery of 6 million reals from their cars. This seizure reveals how the stolen goods were placed in a complex web of connections leading back to the theft, from Charles's connections to Marco Ruggiero, a known crime lord in the São Paulo underworld. According to the investigations, Charles was less of a mastermind behind the robbery and more of a go-between. Although his activities were restricted to the facilitation of the actual events, he still got entangled as an accomplice despite having been removed from the actual tunneling and stealing. During his collaboration with the authorities, he disclosed that the target group was about 34 people and only his brother was familiar among them. Charles went above and beyond by helping to decipher the network's links and identities by identifying collaborators from photo lineups. Pablo, the front company's pseudonymous owner whose identity was concealed in an ID photo by a beanie, was one of the people named. As part of their continuing investigation into the massive bank theft, the investigators in Fortaleza have focused on Elamao, a man known for his roles in several high-profile robberies. Elamao is also believed to have been the strategic brains of the gang, being that he was often associated with Marco, Charles's brother. In 2001, Moises and 52 other inmates made an exciting escape from Carandaru jail through a tunnel they had carefully dug, and thus he establishes himself as a central character due to his ability in digging. In 2004, Moises used his tunneling skills in a major role in the robbery of a bank in São Paulo, thus proving that his skills were not only limited to jail breakouts, and such evident of his leadership and his ability to strategize is in the manner he organizes and picks the gang together, and then finally putting them into action for the heist in the central bank. While the man was a prime suspect, the strong participation of the man in the crime was not evident at once to the authorities. When the investigation shifted, a great deal of evidence was prepared by the police along with a list of suspects. Nevertheless, their main goal went beyond just making arrests. They wanted to get their hands on the stolen money. The police used surveillance to follow the money to its layers because they knew about loopholes that existed in the legal system that would allow convicted offenders to ultimately enjoy the funds in question illicitly. In the midst of the tumult of the officers searching the house, they made a breakthrough after finding a SIM card. Following the development, they were able to tap to the communication network of the gang, which brought to light how meticulous the thieves were with the money stolen. From the phone number of the SIM card was established an audio recording of a conversation with Antonio Edamar, in which the gang seems to be worried about attracting attention that would be untimely and to spend the money. Though of course, at first, Antonio was still a known criminal, at least to the police, who was believed to live in the Boa Viagem locale. Further surveillance showed that Antonio bought a lot of rubber bands for bundling the currency, showing the gang's activities. With this information at hand, the federal authorities were able to locate Antonio at a red house in Boa Viagem. In a well-executed operation and camouflaged as commoners, the police were placed in a cafe which overlooked the house of the suspect. The alertness was suddenly broken when one of the sharp-eyed departing saw through their camouflage, and his identity was revealed in an instant, and without any doubt, they bellowed at the men to surrender and took out their guns. The house was quickly surrounded and its occupants captured as reinforcements arrived just in time, and it was while searching the property that an amazing find was discovered: more than 12 million reals, scattered throughout every nook and cranny, from purses and backpacks to a secret underground cache bearing the size of the hall of the heist. David the Old has emerged as one of the leaders of the arrested, who turned out to be the main mastermind of how to evenly distribute the loot among the crew, maintaining exact records in a modest notebook. Also arrested were 3 key associates of the bank robbers who were taking part in David's operations, but not on the scene of the bank robbery. The case was therefore taken further as the detectives chased fresh leads that cropped up when they were interrogated, and the tangled web of lies and connivance was uncovered. One of the detained men, Dismar, confessed to an important loophole in the defense of the bank. A corrupted guard named Edelson had revealed the system of security protecting the vault. The theft could be carried out with amazing precision. The crook's ability to sneak through the complex network of security and surveillance was dependent on this insider. Raymando Lorendo's calls, despite the fact that he had been cautious when using payphones, had been under surveillance at the same time. Following the trail to Porto Alegre, another daring scheme was hatched when Raymando met up with Alessandro, alias the Fat. The gathering of people who were all associated with Raymando and Alessandro at a particular location signaled the creation of a new plot, when someone saw Alessandro escorting a group of people and the gang's relentless goal was revealed when they discovered tunneling works on the property, which was strategically close to Banrizal, a major bank. As the new gang prepared to assault the Banrizal Bank's underground vaults, a dramatic twist straight out of a crime thriller occurred when the police, in civilian disguise, set up business in a building across from where the gang was hiding. A particular gang, for example, was observed for several weeks as undercover officers, posing as construction workers, and with the aid of a web of cameras and other surveillance equipment, managed to keep a constant eye on the gang outside the building. The police were onto this find as they had been taking to dumping what appeared to be a rather large quantity of digging trash. The fact that this trash might contain information on their tunneling progress made it really intriguing. We watched the group carefully so as to spoil their breaking into the bank. From the intercepted communications, a shadowy figure was blackmailing the group. He would expose their operation until they gave him a part of the anticipated riches. The assault was a very meticulously planned and accurately executed maneuver where the building was secured by snipers. Special troops were placed all around the building and without any disturbance went inside the structure. As a result, 26 people were arrested and a tunnel almost complete was found. Amidst the department-wide corruption that this operation exposed, a heist was thwarted. The arrest of Raymando and Alessandro the Fat, two accomplices with ties to the infamous central bank heist. One of these wanted men was Jose Maliotto. This has so much an impact on his life that he feels relieved being a fugitive. The funny part is that this criminal billionaire is showing sadness for his freedom. The raid did more than just bring the gang to justice. It reignited efforts to bring the remaining central bank robbers to justice as well. The arrested influential figure exhibited the level of desperation and the smartness depicted one by one. Such narrow escapes and smart personas were a par and parcel of the story. Limao did wear a thick beard and long hair to camouflage himself in order not to look too suspicious. His camouflage was seen through by a tattoo, and he was arrested with the confiscation of his belongings. Paolo Sergio, or his part in the heist as Belo Horizonte, was the one representative of the paranoia striking the participants of the heist. One cannot ignore Sergio's reasonable fear that he was being kidnapped in his detention outside a car rental firm, for he had been kidnapped several times in the past by persons purporting to be law officers. The story took a dark turn when we encountered Moises, the tunnel expert known for his extensive knowledge of underground escape routes. The fact that the cops knew he was instrumental in the operation, having recruited the gang members, made his involvement very clear. Moises managed to avoid difficulty for a long time with the support of his family and a network of associates. Even more shocking than the theft itself were the FBI agents who caught him. Claiming a car accident had happened led him into a trap. It basically reduced every chance that Moises could possibly run away from the investigation pursued by the law enforcement agency. Moises' function was not the only key role. Fernandinho's function as the funder and Olimo's participation in the implementation all stand out as major factors. With Fernandinho on board, it became fairly obvious that for a heist of this magnitude, a fairly substantial logistical backup was in place, which covered finding suitable bases of operation onto sourcing key elements for the excavation of the tunnel. The tragic epilogue to the central bank heist would reveal the dark secret that continued to hang over the operation. Fernandinho, however, who bankrolled the project and had put 3 million reals into it, with high expectations of getting it back, died in a terrible manner. He was kidnapped a couple of times and murdered after ransom was paid, proving police corruption and unfaithfulness. The cycle of killing and revenge carried on after Fernandinho's death even. Hundreds of burglary victims were threatened in similar with criminals and corrupt police officers who used their rank for the evil purpose. Another gang member, Pedro, describes a sense of fear and menace from the others who tried to take advantage of them for their new wealth. This actually did more harm than good, because the stolen millions served to underscore how tenuous life is for those who decide to live outside the law. Such events only serve to underline this point. A robbery of the central bank shook not only Brazil, but was provoking a whole wave of analogous crimes, and thereby gave the start for the further development of underground bank theft. Despite the mentioned setbacks, police made a major headway in attacking the stealing organization, recovering part of the funds, and bringing a huge number of people to charge. The decision was not binding in the given case. One of the principal figures in the theft, Juvenal, remained at large. He provided a constant reminder of the intertwining webs of the operation and evasiveness of some of its organizers. Members found to have been convicted received punishments that were proportional to the gravity of the offenses committed. Further disrespect came from allegations of money laundering that brought about long prison terms and even life sentences in some cases. This is the true story of what occurred after a 2005 criminal heist in Brazil, packed with lies, greed, and treachery. Thanks for watching.